the portrait Washington hated, but America loved. When Americans picture George Washington, they rarely think of a battlefield or even Mount Vernon. Instead, they see a face, calm, steady, and framed by white hair. It's the face printed on the $1 bill, the most circulated piece of U.S. currency. But here's the remarkable truth. That image comes from a painting that was never finished. This famous work, painted by Gilbert Stuart in 1796, is known as the Athenaeum Portrait. It is a head and shoulders likeness, Washington's face carefully completed, while his clothing and background remain unfinished. Ironically, this incomplete canvas became the most reproduced portrait in American history. Its story is one of genius, deception, and enduring legacy. The portrait itself. When you look at the Athenaeum portrait, you notice immediately how finished and lifelike the face appears compared to the faint, sketchy outlines of the body. Stuart poured his skill into Washington's expression, while leaving the rest untouched. The unfinished state makes the face almost float, as if Washington is emerging from shadow into light, a powerful symbol for a young nation still taking shape. Gilbert Stuart, Talent and Trouble. Gilbert Stuart was born in Rhode Island in 1755. He studied in London under Benjamin West, one of the great portraitists of the time, and soon gained a reputation for his natural style and luminous flesh tones. Stuart had a rare gift. He could make faces seem alive on the canvas. Unlike many artists, he painted directly onto the canvas without preliminary sketches, trusting his eye and brush to capture his subject. But Stuart had one fatal weakness: money. He lived extravagantly, fell into debt, and was constantly chased by creditors. By the time he returned to America in 1793, he had a bold plan. If he could paint George Washington, the demand for copies would make him rich. Washington, the difficult sitter. Washington, by then president, was not eager to pose. Years of portraits had left him tired of the process. Artists often complained that he was stiff and expressionless. A major reason was physical: Washington's dental problems. Contrary to the myth, his dentures were not wood, but ivory, animal teeth, and metal. They were bulky, painful, and distorted his jaw. To hide his discomfort, Washington kept his lips tightly closed, which made his expression seem rigid and solemn. When Stuart met him in Philadelphia in 1796, he worked hard to put the president at ease. He asked questions, made conversation, and studied every angle of his face. Stuart exaggerated certain features, like Washington's broad forehead and strong nose, to create an image that was both realistic and symbolic. He wanted to paint not only the man, but the leader of a nation. The Athenaeum Portrait kept for profit. Stuart began the Athenaeum Portrait in 1796, but he never finished it. Why? Because he realized the unfinished head was more valuable to him than the completed painting would be to its commissioners. By keeping the canvas in his studio, Stuart could use it as a model for countless replicas. And that is exactly what he did. He painted more than 100 copies of Washington's likeness, selling them to eager clients for high fees. The original portrait became his golden goose. The name Athenaeum Portrait came later, after Stuart's death in 1828, when his daughters sold the canvas to the Boston Athenaeum, a prestigious cultural institution that served as both a library and museum. The Athenaeum prided itself on preserving art and knowledge for the nation, and acquiring Stuart's Washington was a triumph. A pair of portraits, George and Martha. At the same time, Stuart also painted an unfinished portrait of Martha Washington. using the same method: detailed face, sketchy background. Like George's portrait, it remained in his studio and was never completed. He used both portraits as templates for replicas, securing his fortune while frustrating those who had expected finished commissions. The Vaughan and Lansdowne types. The Athenaeum head was not Stuart's only Washington. His portraits are usually grouped into three types: the Vaughan type 1795, a more frontal, earlier likeness, commissioned by Samuel Vaughan; the Athenaeum type 1796, the unfinished head and shoulders portrait, Stuart kept for himself; the Lansdowne type 1796, a full-length portrait, commissioned by William Bingham as a gift to the Marquis of Lansdowne. This version shows Washington standing, one arm extended, with books, symbols of democracy, and even a rainbow in the background. The head in the Lansdowne portrait is copied directly from the Athenaeum version. Together, these types reveal Stuart's clever strategy. One sitting with Washington could fuel endless variations, each suited to different audiences. Washington's feelings. What did Washington think of Stuart? Reports differ. Some suggest he found Stuart's manner irritating, and once compared the artist's watchful gaze to being under the inspection of a monkey. Still, Martha Washington praised Stuart's portrait as the truest likeness of her husband. That approval mattered, for it cemented the portrait's reputation as the defining image of the president. From canvas to currency. The most enduring legacy of the Athenaeum portrait is its role in American currency. When the $1 bill was designed, engravers used Stuart's unfinished head of Washington as the model. But there's a small twist. The version on the dollar bill is actually a mirrored image of the portrait. The flip is subtle, but it means the most familiar picture of Washington is not exactly how Stuart painted him. Think about that. Every day, billions of people handle a fragment of an unfinished painting, reversed and reprinted on slips of paper, yet instantly recognizable as George Washington. Stuart's broader legacy. Though the Washington portraits made him immortal, Stuart's career stretched far beyond. He painted 6 American presidents in total: Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, and John Quincy Adams. His portraits of the founding generation defined how Americans and the world would remember their leaders. Stuart's technique, his quick, direct brushstrokes, luminous skin tones, and ability to animate a face set him apart from the stiff, formal styles of his contemporaries. He gave his sitters warmth, humanity, and presence. Yet Stuart never escaped his financial troubles. Even after profiting from Washington's image, he died in 1828, still in debt. The fate of the originals. After Stuart's death, his family sold the Athenaeum portraits of George and Martha Washington to the Boston Athenaeum. Today, George Washington's unfinished portrait is jointly owned by the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, and the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. It is displayed in the Capitol, where millions of visitors see it each year. Its national importance is now secure, not just as a painting, but as a cultural treasure. Conclusion: A Face for a Nation. Gilbert Stuart's Athenaeum portrait is more than an unfinished painting. It is a symbol of ambition, deception, and legacy. Stuart painted it for profit, kept it for himself, and left it incomplete. Yet from that half-finished canvas came the most enduring image of America's first president. Perhaps its incompleteness is appropriate. Washington himself believed America was always a work in progress, never finished but constantly being shaped. Stuart's portrait, with its glowing face, Emerging from an unfinished body reflects that truth. From imperfection came a perfect symbol, the face of a nation.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Enduring. Definition: something that lasts for a very long time and continues without disappearing or weakening. Example: the enduring influence of Shakespeare can still be seen in modern plays and movies. 2. Luminous. Definition: giving off light or appearing to shine brightly, also used to describe something clear, glowing or full of life. Example: the artist captured her luminous smile, which seemed to brighten the entire room. 3. Extravagantly. Definition: in a way that spends too much money or uses too many resources, more than is necessary or reasonable. Example: he lived extravagantly, throwing grand parties even when he was deeply in debt. 4. Dentures. Definition: artificial teeth, usually removable, made to replace natural teeth that are missing. Example: the old man placed his dentures in a glass of water before going to bed. 5. Prestigious. Definition: having a high reputation or great respect, often because of tradition, quality, or importance. Example: she studied at a prestigious university, known for producing world leaders. 6. Templates. Definition: standard models, patterns, or guides, used as examples for creating new things. Example: the teacher gave us templates for writing essays, so we could learn the correct structure. 7. Replica. Definition: an exact copy of something, often made to look just like the original. Example: the museum displayed a replica of the ancient vase, while the real one was kept safely in storage. 8. Circulated. Definition: moved around widely from person to person, or spread through a group or area. Example: the rumor circulated quickly through the school, reaching every classroom by lunchtime.
And now, comprehension questions. 1. What is the name of Gilbert Stuart's most famous, unfinished portrait of George Washington? Answer: the Athenaeum Portrait. 2. In what year did Stuart begin painting the Athenaeum Portrait? Answer: 1796. 3. Why did Stuart never finish the Athenaeum Portrait? Answer: he deliberately kept it unfinished, so he could use it as a model to create and sell many replicas for profit. 4. What is unusual about the appearance of the portrait? Answer: Washington's face is carefully painted and detailed, but the clothing and background are left as rough outlines, giving it an unfinished look. 5. Why was Washington considered a difficult sitter for portraits? Answer: he suffered from painful, ill-fitting dentures, which made him keep his lips tightly closed and gave him a stiff expression. 6. What myth exists about Washington's false teeth, and what were they really made of? Answer: the myth is that they were made of wood. In reality, they were made of ivory, animal teeth, and metal. 7. What did Martha Washington think of Stuart's portrait? Answer: she thought it was the best likeness of her husband. 8. How did the portrait get the name Athenaeum? Answer: after Stuart's death, his family sold it to the Boston Athenaeum, a respected cultural and intellectual society, and the portrait took its name from the institution. 9. Where is the Athenaeum Portrait House today? Answer: it is jointly owned by the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, and the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., and displayed in the Capitol. 10. What is the relationship between the Athenaeum portrait and the $1 bill? Answer: the image of Washington on the bill is based on the Athenaeum portrait, but it is a mirrored version of Stuart's painting. 11. What companion portrait did Stuart also leave unfinished? Answer: a portrait of Martha Washington, painted in the same style with a finished face and unfinished background. 12. What are the 3 types of Washington portraits painted by Stuart? Answer: the Vaughan type, 1795 earlier, frontal view. The Athenaeum type, 1796, unfinished head and shoulders. The Lansdowne type, 1796, full-length symbolic portrait. 13. Who commissioned the Lansdowne portrait, and for whom was it intended as a gift? Answer: William Bingham commissioned it as a gift for the Marquis of Lansdowne in Britain. 14. What unique aspects of Stuart's painting technique set him apart from other artists of his time? Answer. He painted directly onto canvas without preliminary sketches, and was known for creating luminous, lifelike skin tones that made his sitters appear alive. 15. Why might it be fitting that Washington's most famous portrait is unfinished? Answer. Because Washington believed America itself was an unfinished experiment, always a work in progress. The half-finished portrait reflects that idea.